What happens when one of Hollywood's most recognizable actors walks onto a live daytime talk show expecting a thoughtful, easygoing conversation, but instead finds himself pushed into a tense, uncomfortable exchange that quickly turns into a moment no one in the studio saw coming? Make sure to subscribe to Talk Show Fallout, and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The audience is already applauding as Daniel Radcliffe walks out, smiling politely, giving a small wave, clearly relaxed. He takes his seat, adjusts slightly, and leans forward with that familiar, slightly humble energy he's known for. The hosts are smiling too, but there's already a bit of curiosity in the air, the kind that suggests this might not be just another light interview. Sunny Hostin starts things off, leaning slightly toward him with a welcoming smile. "So, Daniel, it's really great to have you here. You've had such an interesting career. I mean, from Harry Potter to now doing more serious, diverse roles. It's been quite a shift." Daniel nods, smiling. "Yeah, thank you. It's been a journey, I guess. I've just been trying to find things that challenge me." There's a light chuckle from the panel, and the audience claps briefly. Whoopi Goldberg jumps in casually, "And you've definitely done that. Some of your recent roles, people didn't expect that from you." Daniel laughs softly. "Yeah, I think that's kind of the goal. Surprise people a little. Everything feels smooth. Easy. Comfortable." Sunny nods again, but her expression shifts just slightly, still polite but more focused now. "But let me ask you something," she says, her tone becoming a bit more direct. "When you talk about choosing roles that challenge you, do you ever think about the responsibility that comes with the platform you have?" Daniel pauses for a split second, still calm. "In what sense?" Sunny leans in just a little more. "In the sense of representation, messaging, the kind of impact your roles might have socially or politically." The audience quiets slightly. It's subtle but noticeable. Daniel nods slowly. "Yeah, I think about it to an extent. But I also think my primary responsibility is to the story and the character." Joy Behar jumps in with a half smile. "So you're saying you don't really worry about the message?" Daniel shakes his head lightly. "No, I wouldn't say that. I just don't think every role has to carry a specific message. Sometimes it's just about telling a good story." There's a small ripple in the audience, some nods, a few murmurs. Sunny doesn't let it go. "But don't you think, especially in today's climate, that staying neutral is still a statement?" Daniel's expression shifts slightly, not defensive, but more focused now. "I wouldn't call it staying neutral. I'd call it choosing not to force something into a role that doesn't belong there." There's a slight pause. The tension is still low, but it's building. Sunny tilts her head. "But isn't that a privilege? To choose when to engage and when not to." A few audience members react with quiet sounds. Daniel exhales softly, still composed. "I think everyone has the ability to engage in ways that feel authentic to them." Sunny responds quickly. "But not everyone has your platform." That lands a little heavier. The audience reacts more noticeably this time. Daniel leans back slightly, then forward again, choosing his words carefully. "That's true. But I don't think having a platform means you're obligated to speak on everything, all the time." Joy raises her eyebrows. "Really? Because a lot of people would disagree with that." Daniel smiles faintly. "And that's okay. People disagree all the time." There's a small laugh from the audience, easing the tension just a bit, but only briefly. Sunny presses again, her tone still calm but more pointed. "I think the concern is that when influential figures choose not to speak, it can come across as indifference." Daniel's smile fades just slightly, replaced by a more serious look. "I understand that perspective. I really do. But I think there's also a danger in expecting people to speak on things they may not fully understand." The audience reacts again, this time more divided. Sunny leans back, crossing her arms lightly. "So you're saying actors shouldn't speak unless they're experts?" Daniel shakes his head immediately. "No, not at all. I'm saying people should speak when they feel informed and genuine. Not because they feel pressured." Whoopi watches closely, then steps in, trying to balance things. "I think what he's saying is authenticity matters." Daniel nods. "Exactly." Sunny glances at Whoopi, then back at Daniel. "But authenticity can still coexist with responsibility." Now the room feels tighter. The audience is fully engaged. Daniel leans forward slightly, his tone still calm but firmer now. "And I agree with that. I just don't think responsibility should turn into expectation to comment on everything. That's when it becomes performative." There's a louder reaction from the audience, a mix of applause and murmurs. Joy reacts quickly, Performative? That's a strong word. Daniel doesn't back down. It is. But I think it applies sometimes. Sunny's expression tightens just a little. Are you implying that people who do speak out are being performative? Daniel shakes his head again, carefully. No. I'm saying that when people feel forced to speak just because they're expected to, it can lose sincerity. The audience is now fully split. Some clapping, some quiet. Sunny leans forward again, her voice slightly sharper now. Or maybe they speak because they care. Daniel meets her gaze, calm but direct. And that's great. But caring and being informed aren't always the same thing. That line lands. The audience reacts immediately, louder this time. Some applause, some gasps. Joy turns toward Daniel, surprised. Wow. Sunny doesn't smile this time. So now we're questioning people's awareness? Daniel stays composed. No, I'm saying everyone, including me, should be mindful of what we say and why we say it. There's a brief pause. The tension is now clearly visible. Whoopi steps in again. All right, this is getting interesting. The audience laughs lightly, but the energy doesn't fully relax. Sunny looks at Daniel again, her tone steady but firm. I just think when you have influence, silence can be interpreted in ways you might not intend. Daniel nods slowly. And I understand that. But I also think people are allowed to define how they use their voice. The two hold eye contact for a moment. The audience is completely locked in now. What started as a casual conversation has clearly shifted into something deeper and more tense. And it's only just getting started. The audience is still reacting in small waves, a mix of applause fading out and a few lingering murmurs, as the tension hangs in the air just a little longer than usual for a daytime show. Daniel sits back slightly, but he's still engaged, hands loosely clasped, posture open but clearly more alert now. Sunny doesn't look away right away either. There's a pause that feels real, not awkward but charged. Whoopi leans forward, trying to keep things moving. All right, let's stay with this for a second, because this is actually a conversation people are having everywhere. Joy nods quickly. Yeah, it's not just about actors, it's about everybody with any kind of following. Sunny turns slightly toward the panel, then back to Daniel. Exactly. And I think people at home are wondering, when someone like you says you don't feel the need to speak on everything, what does that look like in practice? Daniel nods, taking that seriously. It means I try to be thoughtful about when I do speak. I don't want to just repeat what's already being said or jump into something without fully understanding it. Sunny responds immediately, but you're an intelligent person. You clearly follow what's going on in the world. So why not use your voice more consistently? There's a soft from parts of the audience again. Daniel exhales through a small smile, not dismissive but measured. Because consistency for the sake of consistency doesn't always equal impact. Joy tilts her head. That sounds like a nice way of saying you pick and choose when it's convenient. A few audience members react to that, some laughter, some ooh sounds. Daniel's expression shifts just slightly, still polite, but now more direct. No, I pick and choose when I feel I can actually contribute something meaningful. Sunny raises her eyebrows. And who decides what's meaningful? You. Daniel answers calmly, without hesitation. In terms of what I say publicly, yes. That line gets a stronger reaction. A few claps, a few surprised looks. Sunny leans forward again. But don't you think that can come across as selective accountability? Daniel tilts his head slightly, considering. I think it can be interpreted that way, sure. But I also think people sometimes expect public figures to operate under a standard that isn't realistic. Whoopi nods slowly, watching the exchange closely. Explain that. Daniel shifts slightly in his seat. I think there's this idea that if you have a platform, you should constantly be using it to comment on every issue. And if you don't, people question your character. Sunny cuts in gently but firmly. Because silence can signal something. Daniel looks at her directly. Or it can signal that someone doesn't want to reduce a complex issue into a quick statement. The audience reacts again, this time more balanced but louder. Joy jumps in. But isn't saying nothing also a kind of statement? Whether you like it or not. Daniel nods. It can be perceived that way, yes. But perception isn't always reality. That gets a mix of applause and murmurs. Sunny doesn't let up. But perception is what people respond to. That's the reality we live in. Daniel leans forward slightly, his tone still controlled but firmer now. And that's exactly why I think it's important not to contribute to noise unless you're adding something real. The audience reacts again, louder this time. Joy looks at him, half smiling but clearly intrigued. You keep saying real. It almost sounds like you think a lot of what people say publicly isn't. Daniel pauses for just a moment, then answers carefully. I think sometimes people feel pressure to say something quickly, and that can lead to statements that aren't fully thought through. Sunny's voice sharpens just a touch. Or maybe they're responding in real time because things matter in real time. Daniel nods. That's fair. But urgency doesn't always equal clarity. There's a louder, "oh" from parts of the audience. Whoopi leans back slightly, raising her eyebrows. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Sunny turns slightly toward Whoopi, then back to Daniel. So what I'm hearing is, you'd rather wait, process, and then maybe say something later, if at all? Daniel nods. Yes. Because I think that's more honest. Sunny shakes her head lightly. But by the time you process, the moment may have passed. Daniel responds quickly this time. Then maybe it wasn't my moment to speak on. That line lands harder than anything so far. The audience reacts loudly, a mix of applause, surprise, and a few scattered gasps. Joy turns to Sunny, eyes wide. Wow, he's holding his ground. Sunny's expression tightens again, but she keeps her tone controlled. So you're comfortable stepping back while others take the lead? Daniel meets her gaze evenly. If they're better equipped to speak on it, yes. Sunny responds almost immediately. Or is it easier to let others take the heat? There's a noticeable shift in the room again. Daniel pauses, not long, but long enough to show he's choosing his next words carefully. No, he says finally, his voice calm but more serious now. It's about recognizing your limits. Sunny leans in slightly. But you're not just any individual. You're someone people look up to. Daniel nods. And that's exactly why I think it's important not to speak carelessly. The audience reacts again, a steady mix now but engaged. Joy crosses her arms lightly. It still sounds like you're avoiding responsibility. Daniel looks at her, then back at Sunny. I don't see it that way. Sunny presses. Then how do you see it? Daniel leans forward slightly, hands now resting on his knees. I see it as respecting the weight of what I say. Not treating it like it's something I have to do on a schedule. That draws a strong reaction, louder applause from parts of the audience. Sunny doesn't clap. She watches him closely. But do you understand, she says, her voice steady but pointed, that to some people, that sounds like you're choosing comfort over accountability? There's a brief silence. Daniel's expression changes, not defensive but more resolved now. I understand why it might sound that way, he says slowly. But I don't think speaking out of pressure is accountability. I think it's reaction. The audience reacts again, louder than before. Joy leans toward Whoopi, whispering something off mic, but the cameras catch her expression, impressed, slightly surprised. Sunny sits back for a moment, then leans forward again, clearly not finished. So let me ask you this, she says. If something directly affects your audience, something serious, would you still take that same approach? Daniel nods without hesitation. I'd take it seriously. I'd listen, learn, and then speak if I felt I had something meaningful to say. Sunny responds quickly. And if people expected you to speak immediately? Daniel gives a small, controlled smile. Expectations don't always dictate what's right. That line gets another strong reaction, louder applause, mixed with a few audible reactions of disbelief. The energy in the studio is now fully charged. What started as a thoughtful discussion has clearly turned into a real debate, with neither side backing down. Whoopi looks between them, slightly amused but also aware of how intense it's getting. All right, we're going to take a quick breath here. But Sunny interrupts, just slightly. No, I just want to clarify one thing. The audience quiets again instantly. She turns fully toward Daniel now. Do you think people who consistently use their platforms to speak out are doing it for the wrong reasons? The question hangs there. It's sharper than anything she's asked so far. And the room goes completely still, waiting for his answer. The silence lingers for a second longer than usual, the kind that makes the audience lean in without even realizing it. Daniel doesn't rush to answer. He shifts slightly in his seat, eyes briefly dropping as if he's choosing his words very carefully. Then he looks back up at Sunny. No, he says calmly. I don't think that at all. There's a small release in the room, a few nods, a couple claps, but the tension doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. I think a lot of people who speak out do it because they genuinely care, Daniel continues. And I respect that. Completely. Sunny watches him closely, her expression still serious. But Daniel gives a small, acknowledging nod. But I also think there are times when the pressure to respond publicly can blur the line between genuine concern and expectation. Joy leans in slightly. You keep coming back to that word, pressure. Daniel glances toward her. Because it's real. Especially now. Sunny crosses her arms lightly again. Pressure from who? Daniel answers without hesitation. From audiences, from media, from social platforms, from the idea that if you don't say something immediately, you must not care. There's a ripple through the audience, more thoughtful this time. Sunny responds, her tone still firm but less sharp than before. Or maybe it's not pressure. Maybe it's accountability. Daniel tilts his head slightly. I think accountability comes from what you actually do, not just what you say. That line lands in a different way, quieter but deeper. A few audience members clap, slower this time. Sunny nods once, but she doesn't back off. Words matter too. Daniel nods right back. They do. That's exactly why I think they should be used carefully. There's a brief pause again. Not as tense as before, but still charged. Whoopi leans forward, resting her hands together. Let me ask you something, Daniel. Do you think sometimes people expect celebrities to lead conversations they should be having themselves? Daniel exhales softly, almost relieved at the question. Yes, I do think that happens. Sunny looks toward Whoopi, then back at Daniel. But influence exists whether you ask for it or not. Daniel nods. That's true, but influence doesn't automatically equal authority. Joy raises her eyebrows. So you don't see yourself as someone who should guide conversations? Daniel shakes his head slightly. I see myself as someone who can participate, not lead. That gets a noticeable reaction, some agreement, some skepticism. Sunny leans forward again, her voice measured but still pressing. But when millions of people are listening to you, participating and leading can look very similar. Daniel meets her gaze again, steady. They can look similar, but they're not the same. Sunny responds quickly. To the public, they often are. Daniel pauses, then says, then maybe the public expectation needs to be adjusted. That line hits harder than expected. The audience reacts instantly. Louder applause mixed with a few surprised reactions. Joy turns toward him, almost laughing in disbelief. You're really not backing down, are you? Daniel gives a small, polite smile. I'm just being honest. Sunny doesn't smile this time. Honesty is important. But so is awareness. Daniel nods. I agree. Sunny continues. And part of awareness is understanding how your silence or your timing might affect people. Daniel's tone stays calm, but there's more weight in it now. And part of awareness is understanding when your voice might not be the most helpful one in the moment. That line shifts the energy again. There's a stronger reaction. More applause now, louder, more confident. Sunny leans back slightly, taking that in, but then leans forward again almost immediately. But how do you determine that? She asks. Because from the outside, it can look like avoidance. Daniel takes a breath. I determine it by asking myself if I actually understand the issue well enough to contribute something meaningful, or if I'd just be adding to the noise. Joy cuts in. You really don't like that word, noise. Daniel smiles faintly. I think there's a lot of it. A few laughs break through the tension, but it doesn't last long. Sunny speaks again, her tone softer now but still direct. Do you think some of the people who speak out regularly are part of that noise? Daniel pauses again. This time, the hesitation is more noticeable. I think, he starts, then stops, choosing his words again. I think sometimes conversations get crowded. And when too many voices are trying to say something quickly, clarity can get lost. That answer gets a mixed reaction. Some nods, some quiet disagreement. Sunny studies him for a moment. That sounds like a careful way of not answering the question. A few audience members react with soft laughter. Daniel doesn't seem rattled. It's a careful way of being fair. That line draws a louder reaction, a mix of applause and okay murmurs. Whoopi smiles slightly, clearly entertained by how composed he's staying. He's good at this. Joy nods. Very good. Sunny exhales lightly, then shifts her posture, as if recalibrating. Let me bring it back to something more specific, she says. You've spoken out on certain issues in the past. So clearly, you do use your platform when you feel strongly. Daniel nods. Yes. So what makes those moments different? Sunny asks. Daniel answers more quickly this time. When I feel like I've taken the time to understand something properly, and when I feel like my voice might actually add something constructive. Sunny tilts her head. And if people disagree with what you say in those moments? Daniel gives a small shrug. That's part of it. You can't control how people respond. Joy jumps in. So you're okay with criticism, just not pressure? Daniel nods. Exactly. Sunny leans forward one more time, her tone now more pointed again. But pressure and criticism often come from the same place, people wanting you to do better. Daniel's expression tightens just slightly, not defensive but firmer. I think wanting someone to do better is valid, he says. But deciding for them what better looks like, that's where it gets complicated. That line lands hard. The audience reacts loudly, one of the strongest reactions so far. Sunny doesn't immediately respond this time. She watches him for a moment, clearly weighing her next words. The dynamic has shifted now. At the beginning, she was leading the conversation. Now it feels like Daniel is meeting her point for point, calmly, directly, without raising his voice. Whoopi looks between them, then glances out toward the audience. You can feel this one, she says, half smiling. The audience laughs lightly, but the intensity is still there. Sunny finally speaks again, quieter now but still focused. I just think people expect more from those they admire. Daniel nods slowly. And I understand that. There's a brief pause. Then he adds, a little more firmly this time, but I also think admiration shouldn't turn into obligation. That line hits like a turning point. The audience reacts loudly, a mix of applause and surprised reactions. Joy leans back in her chair, shaking her head slightly. Wow! Sunny doesn't respond immediately. She just looks at him. And for the first time, it feels like she's not just challenging him. She's reassessing him. The tension hasn't disappeared, but it's changed. Now it feels less like one side pushing, and more like a real, balanced standoff unfolding live on air. The audience reaction lingers, louder than before, more unified this time. And for a moment, nobody at the table speaks. It's not awkward, but it's the kind of pause that only happens when something real has just been said. Whoopi looks out at the audience, then back at the panel. All right, that's a strong note to sit on, she says, letting out a small breath. Joy nods, still half smiling. Yeah, I didn't expect this to go here today. There's a ripple of laughter, but it's lighter now, more of a release than anything else. Sunny shifts in her seat, her posture relaxing just slightly. When she speaks again, her tone is different. Still serious, but less confrontational. I'll say this, she begins, looking directly at Daniel. Even if we don't fully agree, I do appreciate that you're being honest and not just giving a rehearsed answer. Daniel nods, equally calm. I appreciate that. And I understand where you're coming from too. There's a small moment of mutual acknowledgement there, not agreement, but respect. The audience claps softly. Sunny continues. I think these conversations matter because people are trying to figure out what responsibility looks like in real time. There isn't one clear answer. Daniel nods again. Exactly. And I don't think there should be just one way to approach it. Joy leans forward, looking between them. I think what surprised me is that you didn't try to soften your position even when it got uncomfortable. Daniel gives a small, almost self-aware smile. I mean, I tried to be respectful. But yeah, I didn't want to pretend I felt differently. That gets a light laugh from the audience. Whoopi chimes in, and that's fair. People can handle disagreement. What they don't like is when it feels fake. The audience reacts with a bit more applause. Sunny nods slowly, then adds, I still believe that when you have a platform, there's a level of responsibility that comes with it. But I hear what you're saying about authenticity. Daniel responds, and I agree there's responsibility. I just think it looks different for different people. There's another brief pause, but this one feels calmer, like the tension has finally leveled out. Whoopi looks toward the camera slightly. Well, this turned into a conversation, she says with a small smile. Joy laughs. That's one way to put it. The audience laughs along, the energy now noticeably lighter than before. Whoopi turns back to Daniel. Before we wrap, anything you want people watching to take away from this? Daniel takes a second, then answers simply. Just that it's okay to think carefully before you speak. And it's also okay to speak when you feel strongly. There's room for both. That gets a solid round of applause. Sunny nods once more subtly this time. That's fair. Whoopi gestures toward him. Daniel Radcliffe, everybody. The audience applauds louder now, some people even standing. Daniel smiles, giving a small wave again, the same calm energy he walked out with. But now there's something more behind it. Not tension, but presence. As the applause continues and the show begins to transition, the cameras pull back slightly. The panel exchanges a few quieter words off mic, and the moment slowly dissolves into the usual daytime rhythm. But the conversation clearly isn't ending there. Within minutes of the segment airing, clips start circulating online. Short excerpts, especially the more intense moments, begin picking up traction across social media. One clip in particular spreads quickly, Daniel saying, "Admiration shouldn't turn into obligation." That line becomes the centerpiece of the discussion. Some viewers praise him for staying composed and standing his ground. Comments highlight how calm and measured he remained, even as the questions became more pointed. Others side with Sunny, arguing that public figures do have a responsibility to speak out more consistently, especially during important moments. Debates start forming in comment sections, not just about what was said, but about the bigger question behind it. Is silence a choice or a statement? Should influence always come with expectation? Clips of Sunny's questions also gain traction, with many viewers saying she asked what a lot of people were thinking, but don't always hear addressed directly. Backstage, according to later reports, the atmosphere is professional but reflective. There's no argument, no lingering conflict, just a recognition that the conversation went further than expected. Daniel reportedly thanks the hosts before leaving, and Sunny is said to have exchanged a brief, respectful goodbye with him. No drama, just the kind of quiet acknowledgement that sometimes follows a real discussion. By the end of the day, multiple media outlets are covering the segment. Headlines focus on the exchange, calling it unexpected, thought-provoking, and one of the more honest conversations on daytime TV in recent memory. And viewers keep going back and forth. Some say Daniel clapped back, without ever raising his voice. Others say Sunny held him accountable in a way that needed to happen. But almost everyone agrees on one thing. It didn't feel scripted. It felt real. And those are the moments people remember. So what do you think? Was Daniel right to stand his ground and define how he uses his voice? Or do you think Sunny made a stronger point about responsibility and accountability? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to Talk Show Fallout for more real talk show stories.